am home right now for the holidays, so I thought I would take advantage of this really rare opportunity to show you guys where I'm from. I have been living on the road for about 3 years now, but I do still technically have a home that I come back to here in Northern California. This is my home office. I sat right here and stared at this map for years, scheming how to possibly travel to every country. And it's so fun coming back and seeing all of these little things I have been able to pick up along the way. I could probably make a video just on travel souvenirs alone. I'm definitely gonna be making a video about why I have 8 passports, but it's so fun because each and every piece has a unique story. Which is exactly what I want to tell you guys about today. This is a story about the most scared I have ever been in a situation while traveling. So let's sit down and I'll tell you about it. So, by far, the most culture shock I have ever experienced while traveling was on a trip to Yemen. I had never been anywhere even remotely like this place, and I had no idea what to expect. I'm not going to describe too much about what's going on there politically and with the ongoing civil war, because it is an extremely complicated subject, but here is a brief overview to give you some context.
Yemen went from being the heart of ancient Arabia to one of the poorest countries in the Middle East. And for the last 5 years, it's been torn apart by war.
After the Arab Spring toppled dictators across the Middle East, Yemenis want a change too. Their president, Ali Abdullah Saleh, was forced to hand over power to this guy. But the political transition to Hadi failed. There was massive unemployment, food insecurity, suicide bombings, and a separatist movement in the south. All that ended up sparking the war.
So when people talk about Yemen being a proxy war, this is what they mean. It's the fact that 2 major rivals, Saudi Arabia and Iran, are backing opposite sides in a foreign war. So are all the other countries in Saudi's coalition. Plus, allies like the United States, France, and the United Kingdom who've been supplying them with weapons and logistical support. Not to mention all of Yemen's armed groups, including the Houthis, secessionist groups in the south, Al-Qaeda, and ISIL. When the war is over, the UN says they could all be liable for atrocities in Yemen.
And to make matters worse, 2/3 of Yemenis don't have access to clean water. So where does that leave us? Little ground has been gained, and several attempts to mediate the conflict have fallen apart. Since neither side shows any sign of giving up soon, Yemen is in a deadlock.
So this was the situation that I was heading into when I was 19 years old. I had heard of a Norwegian author named Gunnar Garfors who was looking for a photographer to cover his book about the least visited countries in the world. When I reached out to Gunnar, he told me about this upcoming trip to Yemen, and I knew I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't join him. So keep in mind that I had never met Gunnar in person before we picked up our business visas and media permits and traveled to Yemen on a one-way ticket. At the time, I could never have anticipated what I was getting myself into on that trip. It only took a few days in Yemen and I was hooked. Despite how chaotic it felt at times, this was a whole new world of travel, and there was so much to learn.
How is it?
It's very good.
How does it compare to cow's milk?
It's warmer.
It was here that I found a style of photography that I was really passionate about. I was fascinated by everything and felt completely immersed in a way of life so different than my own, but also the same in a lot of the little ways. After a few days, I was starting to feel more comfortable here. That's when I realized the situation can change at any moment. I told this story for the first time on the TEDx stage. On our last night in the country, I woke up to the sound of gunshots outside of my hotel. I jumped out of bed and ran to the window to see that there were 50 or so men congregated in the parking lot, yelling and pushing each other around with 6 cars with flashing headlights, blocking the only exit. With no security in sight, I grabbed my phone to call my contact in the country, who didn't answer because this was happening around 2 o'clock in the morning. I could hear voices outside of my hotel room, even though I knew that we were the only people staying in the hotel. That was the first time I had ever heard a fully automatic weapon discharged. I literally ducked and looked around the room, realistically looking for the best place to hide. In that moment, there was nothing I could do but sit with my fear of potentially being kidnapped, until eventually all the men disappeared and I could cry myself to sleep after the adrenaline wore off. The next morning, I talked to my contact in the country and asked him what had happened the night before. He responded with, "Oh, that was just a wedding party." Since Yemen is an Islamic country, they do not drink alcohol, and one of the ways that they celebrate is by shooting guns. Basically, what this means is that the scariest thing that has ever happened to me while traveling was only scary because I didn't fully understand the culture. So, as you can see, traveling to Yemen was an eye-opening experience, and I definitely do not recommend traveling to this country unless you are an extremely experienced traveler. The country itself is very unstable and the situation can change at any time. I was very humbled when I felt that I was in danger in a country that does not have a US embassy, so I wasn't able to call anyone for help if I needed to. Even though there is an ongoing war in this country, that does not mean that the people of Yemen are overall bad. I experienced nothing but genuine kindness and hospitality. I only became extremely afraid in the situation that I was in because of a lack of cultural understanding and experience in those kind of situations. And unfortunately, bad things can happen to anyone, anywhere in the world. So it's not worth letting that negativity and darkness win by living your life in fear. After traveling to so many different countries, I can say from personal experience that there is far more love and positivity than there is hatred in the world, and I do not want this video to discourage you from going out and experiencing how much our wonderful planet has to offer. I have learned so much since I started traveling that I can share with you guys to help ensure that your travels are as safe and enjoyable as possible. I'm going to be releasing a solo female travel series later this month, as well as developing a full travel course this year for you guys to teach you everything that I learned about traveling to every country. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe and I will catch you next week.